And now, Fastened Like Nails with Dr. Mark Hamby.
Welcome to Fastened Like Nails, and today I have a special guest, John Lovell, with us in the studio, and our co-host, Molly Mayo. So, John, actually, I just learned about you yesterday, and didn't know anything about you. I started reading some things, and then I was like, okay, we're going to have this guy at the Guild. So we're going to talk about that at the end of this thing. Do you know anything about the Guild?
No, sir.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that at the end. But we've had... Molly, tell them who we had here at the Guild 4 years ago.
You're talking about Joni Eareckson Tada or the Free Burma Rangers?
Free Burma Rangers. Yeah. You familiar with them?
Yes, by name, and I have a guy I know that's working with them right now. He's about to come on furlough, and we'll hang out.
Really? So at our Guild, we had them on a video screen.
Yeah.
And then we showed the movie as well, and boy, I tell you what, there was not a dry eye in the place. And we are excited about serving the Lord. That's what the Christian life is really all about. Mm. You know, it's a battle out there, right?
Right.
And God has equipped us. I get inspired more than anything when I read the life of Caleb. You know, he's 80 years old, and he says, "I feel like I was 40." And then he says this. He goes, "Give me this mountain." You know, the mountain is where the giants were. And he wants to go where the giants are. He wants to take them down. You know, and I just think nothing's impossible with God. And that's the calling that God's given us today. So we're excited. So I came to know you through one of the women that works for us. She works with conferences. And she was at a conference, probably a few months ago. And she says, there's this lady that's speaking. She goes, she keeps talking about Lamplighter books. And she goes, I don't even know who she is. And so she got to know her. And next thing you knew, she said, you know, why don't we do an interview, you know, with her husband who's into this warrior poetry thing. And I'm like, what in the world is a warrior poet? You know, so I started looking into things. And so, John, we do a radio broadcast here known as Fastened Like Nails. And we bring... You know, people that God brings into our path, we'll bring them on these interviews, and other people get to know them. And the phrase, the title, Fasten Like Nails, have you ever heard of it before?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, so it kind of fits who you are a little bit, right? Fasten like nails. You know, if we're going to, it reminds me of two things. One, it represents in the Scriptures a person who has deep convictions. The Word of God is fastened like nails into their lives in such a way that it is unmovable. So whatever your worldview is, no matter what happens to you, that's one thing that isn't going to be taken away because it's fastened like nails. It comes from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12. It's in verses 8 through 11, and it's right in the center there. It talks about the words of delight, truth, and wisdom being fastened like nails. So that's where that phrase comes from.
The imagery is awesome. I like it. I'm feeling terrible that I hadn't noticed that in Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
A big Bible felt right off the cuff. I'm failing.
It was a trick. It was a trick question. It was a trick question.
Well, it's right up my alley. I like the expression for sure. Fasten like nails. It is very good.
Isn't it cool?
It is.
Yeah,
cool.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and it also reminds me of what Jesus did on the cross.
Right.
You know, that they kept saying, save yourself, come down from the cross. Nope. He was fastened like nails, not by the physical nails. He was fastened by his love. He was not willing to come down from the cross to save himself so that he could save others.
That's a good thought of like, yeah, it wasn't Romans that kept him there. It wasn't nails that kept him there or anything else. It was just love.
Nope.
In any moment, he could come down, commander of the Lord's army. Could immediately.
I like this guy.
Could immediately come down. Yeah,
we've got a lot in common, John. So we'll see where God takes us, not only in this interview but in the future. Okay, so tell us a little bit about, before we get into a lot here, I want to know a little bit about where did this idea of warrior poetry come from?
So it's really an ancient idea. I just done the modern copyright. So the whole idea of a warrior poet. I mean, you can go back to, Thucydides' time. You can go back to the Hebrew King David, who was the Bible's greatest worshiper, but also its greatest warrior, all in one one man, and you recognize he's a man after God's own heart. And so I'm like, okay, well then God is like that too. And that's exactly what you see in Revelation 5, is Jesus is eternally Lion of the tribe of Judah and the Lamb that has been slain for us. And so he is Lion and Lamb, lover and fighter, warrior and poet. And so I'm like, all right, that's what we should ascribe to be. I was a military guy. I was in special operations for years and racked up quite a few war tours. And I was on this path as a recent convert back in 2001. I had an encounter with Jesus. I got super saved. I was fastened like nails. And then I'm...
Wait. We should go back to the super saved part. Please tell us about it.
Yeah, I was a tough nut to crack. I was kind of a dude's dude, and I wasn't looking for Jesus per se. I was really just embarking in a life of revelry, and I was kind of enjoying it. I was, though surely I had a deep cratering hole in the center of me, I wasn't aware of it, and I wasn't even seeking to consciously fill that, other than just the frivolities of youth. And so I was just a little party animal at 20-ish years old. And so I had an encounter. Best thing I can say is kind of Paul on the road to Damascus kind of moment. I didn't see lightning. I didn't go blind. And I didn't audibly hear the voice of the Lord, but in the way that God mysteriously communicates, in a way that is unquestionably Him speaking, in a way that I had never heard anything or experienced since, the Lord spoke to me and said, "You have done your own thing long enough. Now you'll speak for me." Now you'll work for me. It's not a red phone, thus saith the Lord, but that was the sentiment. That was the thrust of it. I was given a new heart, and I converted to Christianity upon entering into the military. Now, I'd already moved out at 15 years old. I'd been in plenty of trouble. I was a wrestler. I was kind of a man's man. I was a tough guy, and I was about to embark in all this very specialized training to become an Army Ranger. All that stuff was not... there was hard parts, but that wasn't the hard part. The real hardest part I had in the military was the worst and best day of my life, around May 20th of 2001, when I converted to Christianity. So that's unpacking that.
Why was it the worst day?
Because I was being unmade. It was awful. It was being destroyed. Some people came to Jesus through slipping up their hand in the service and coming down and praying. I felt like I was accosted by Jesus. I felt like it was a violent overthrow. I felt like I was being shattered into 1,000 pieces. I couldn't call home. I couldn't do anything without weeping openly. And here I am. I'm like, no, this is not the right place to be a little sentimental. This is not welcoming over. We're not shoulder to shoulder singing Kumbaya, talking about our feelings here in the military. And so it's hard to explain. It was a mystical experience where I felt quite literally I was being unmade. And so that made it an awful day. And then being remade. And really this stretched out over a few days where it came to a culmination that would be salvation. And that would become a best day. But it was quite inexplicable to this day. I can't really do it justice with words. I'll just say I was one way, and then I met Jesus and everything changed forever.
I was dead and now I'm alive.
That's it.
I was blind and now I see.
It's the only way I can remember it.
John, do you have a insatiable desire that you can't stop talking about your salvation experience?
I've got the Jeremiah 20 thing. I'm like, me
too.
And it's been there for decades.
Yeah, since the day. Yeah. Isn't that something? It's amazing. And then interviews like this only stir it up even more, right?
Yeah, I can't help speaking about Jesus. I can't help it. And though interests come and go, people usually talk about what's important to them, and your interests and your hobbies, and things change over time. This one thing, with nothing else like it, doesn't change. Fastened like nails, so that's pretty cool. So I know it's real. I know it's raw, and I know it's true.
Okay, so then you're in the military, and then after the military, there's this missionary young girl that's growing up becoming a young adult, and how in the world did you meet someone as fiercely raw, battle-ready man of God, and then there's this young woman who's on the mission field with her family, growing up, probably wants to homeschool, have this idyllic life, and then she meets you. How did that happen?
So we became missionaries together after getting married, but she wasn't from a missionary home by any means. We met in college at a big university in Southern Georgia Southern, and she was doing like, they're not beauty pageants, but they're like, she was Miss Georgia Southern, and so she was beauty queen, and she was dating a worship leader at our church. She was not into me, but I was on the prowl. I'd had enough near-death experiences. You almost get shot and blown up a bunch, and after a while, you're like, I would like, a pretty girl that's soft and snuggly to settle into forever with. And so I was on the prowl for a few years, but I knew what I didn't want. So that was allowing me to rule everyone out until I found who the Lord had for me. And when I first met my now wife, she was dating someone else, and I immediately wrote her off, and she didn't like me either. And so it'd be quite a journey, 1.5 years, 2 years before we'd actually get together. And it was like throwing on a light switch where we could see each other clearly all of the sudden. And we were married just a few months later.
That's crazy.
See how it happens, Molly?
That's awesome.
Okay, and then you have how many children?
2.
How old?
10 and 11 years old. And they are really, really into Lamplighter. So
cool.
Their favorite thing when we're not doing homeschool or we're not doing homestead chores. As we speak, they're letting the horses out of the barn because we had a big storm last night. And so they're out on the farm now, and they're doing all kinds of interest and writing and shooting and whatever, but they like to disappear into the basement for hours at a time to work on their Lego city. And it is a city of Legos. And while they do that, they play the Lamplighter books. And yesterday they listened to 2 entire Lamplighters. So it was
that's awesome.
Awesome stuff. But our home is one of Lamplighter Studios.
Okay, so John, in a day in which boys are growing up to be feminine, what are you doing with your boys to help so that never happens?
Great. So I think we're at a point of critical mass in culture now that it is pretty safe to sum it all up like this. Whatever culture is doing, do the exact opposite, and your kids will be raised healthy. I think kids have way too much screen time. I think we send them to government schools, and they are indoctrinated into an antithetical worldview that is absolutely abysmal. Government schools are destroying our kids, and parents have no idea what's going on. They think that it's something kind of like the school they went to. I'm like, those schools are completely gone. It's not even close to that. And so we send them off to Caesar, and we're shocked when they come back as Romans. So don't send them to government schools. You're not letting video games and internet and social media raise them either. You're letting them be outside for copious amounts of time. You're encouraging creative time. So I'm like, all right, boys, go entertain yourselves. And if they come back and they say they're bored, we're like, boredom equals chores. We will give you chores now. And so they're either working hard, playing hard, or they're following their interests, or we're in some type of set homeschooling task. So we spend lots of time together. Last night we read 4 chapters in Ranger's Apprentice, and we finished book 5. And so as a family, we center around to read together each night, and we read Bible, and we worship and go to church together. And so I guess we're just doing everything that everyone always did until like 30 seconds ago in this cultural Orwellian dystopia we're living in.
Have you guys read The Giant Killer yet?
Yeah, my boys have.
Have they? Teddy's Button, Giant Killer.
Teddy's Button is a favorite in our house, by the way. Yeah.
Is it? So there's a new one that's even better than Teddy's Button. It's called Tip Lewis and His Lamp. We'll have to get that to you and your boys. It's incredible. It's one of the best books I've come across that teach every doctrinal, foundational principle for boys and girls too to grow up with, to become mature Christian adults that have discernment. So we'll send it to you. Make sure you guys can read that together.
Awesome. So this was neat. I didn't know this until I was perusing your books at one of the homeschool conferences, but I saw Sir Knight of the Splendid Way.
Oh, cool.
And so I had gotten that probably well over a decade ago. And when I was on the mission field, I read this book, and I remember 3 chapters in a row, I was just weeping openly. And I'm like the tough guy, but still, holy cow, man, this was incredible. Sir Knight of the Splendid Way. It's an allegory that to me is better than Pilgrim's Progress. And that is saying something.
That's what Mark says.
Is it really? It is better than Pilgrim's Progress.
So I've asked over 1,000 people who have read the book, is it better than Pilgrim's Progress? Only one person said no so far.
And they were wrong. They didn't actually read the book. They were lying. They were lying.
It is one of the most powerful allegories I've ever read in my life. It is incredible. It's it is us, isn't it? It's the way we live our life.
It is, and it resonates very well with men. Right behind me on this bookshelf is that book. There's just a few books right behind me on this bookshelf. That's one of them, and I didn't put it there in preparation for this podcast. It's been there for a very long time. Now, if you open the front cover, you'll see about 20 different names, because on the mission field, as I had just different people I would meet, I would loan that book out, and when they would read it, they would sign their name.
Oh,
and
cool.
So it says,
we need to do that.
Of the King's the Great King's Service, and then I've got like 20 names there, so it's been passed
great
down.
Idea.
And I received it from a mentor of mine, my very first mentor, who was in Ranger Battalion. He's no longer with us, and his mentor had given it to him, and so I'm like kind of the grandson there. And so I'm the third name, and then it works.
Praise God.
Down, but pretty neat stuff. But it'll speak to the heart of a man.
You got to hear the story behind the book now. So I come to know this woman who is she travels around the world for her father, who's very wealthy, and they support missionaries. And so she travels around to visit the missionaries to see what their needs are, to see where they are spiritually, to see if they need to continue to receive their support financially. And she had just gotten back from Africa, and she had just broken her engagement. This very lovely, beautiful young woman, about 30 years old. And she'd been engaged for, I think, a couple years, and she'd just broken her engagement. She had to make a choice either to get married or continue in what God had called her to do, to visit the missionaries and travel around the world. And she's brokenhearted, and this old missionary woman in South Africa, saying goodbye to her, hugs her, and then hands her the book, Sir Knight of the Splendid Way. And she says, read this. This is what you need to read. She's on the plane. She finishes the book, comes back to America. She meets me at a conference, because now they're thinking of supporting Lamplighter. And she's going to find out who we are and everything. She finds out that we publish these rare books, and I tell her about my favorite books, and she has this sparkle in her eyes, and she says, I'll be back. So she only lives a few miles away. This is in Indiana. She goes, she comes back with the book in a paper bag. She hands it to me, and I look inside, and I pull it out, and there it is, Sir Knight of the Splendid Way. Written in the this was the 19th century book, okay? So this is an original.
Wow.
And I look at it, and she says, to me, this was like getting a kiss from God himself. And she hands me the book. She goes, I'll give it to you. She goes, but I want it back. And so I read it immediately, that next couple days, and I'm blown away by it. I'm like, whoa. I call her up, and I said, I'm going to print the book immediately, stop the presses. I said, but I love these full-color prints inside the book. Do you have a full-color one, or is yours black and white?
Black and white.
Oh, we'll send you I got to send you a full-color one.
I will take it. I'll take it.
The full color is amazing. Oh, wait till you see the full color. So anyways, I read it, and I said, but I need to be able to take the book apart. I need to destroy it in order to make it publishable with the full color prints. And so she gives me permission to do it. And that's how that book came into being.
Well done. We have been immensely blessed by it. Not enough people know about it, but I've been doing my part. At all the homeschool conferences, my wife are keynoting for great homeschool conventions in all the different states. We're going to Ohio today. We've got Lamplighter where we talk about kids really need heroic stories, and they're not getting that in these days. The narrative is shifted in what type of stories we give kids, and typically it's kind of fatally flawed, injured wing bird victimhood stories. And so it kind of mirrors our intersectional culture, which is a race to the bottom. We're trying to compete to be losers in that sense, not heroically rising up, but saying, no, we're great just the way we are, and there's no reason that you need to try to get better. I'm like, well, that's going to make you lose at life. Good. Of like, no, we need heroic examples. My wife in her speech, Save the Boys, at one of these homeschool conventions, had mentioned The Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis. And it talked about this spoiled brat, Eustace, who had never read the right kind of stories. And that's part of why he was spoiled, and that's part of why he was effeminate, and he wasn't growing into a full-bodied, bold, dangerous masculinity. He hadn't had the right examples in front of him. We love Lamplighter because they're so fun and they're so easy, they'll break your heart, they'll make you laugh, they'll make you stand in celebration and applaud to an empty room. And that's the right kind of stories. It instills,
it is so true, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It is. It's instilling a bold, dangerous, and strong spirit in my boys. And so when we go to the booths and we see Lamplighter, there is no budget that we impose. It's like, nope, get them all. And then, in all of our speeches, hers and mine, we're plugging Lamplighter because we really believe in what you're doing. We appreciate
John,
you.
I've never heard anyone say this before, and I've never thought of it before, that when you're reading a great book, a book that really changes your spirit and your soul, that you could be in a room by yourself and you're celebrating out loud, to nobody but yourself and God, right?
Yep, that's right. It's a good test of a new book where you want to, I just want to run. I'm going to run aimlessly. I'm going to victory shell laps of like you look around when you want to share something. I remember I just finished a great book and my kids were playing on a playground and I had to resist the urge to talk to this mom beside me to just tell her what had happened. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. She's not going to care. She's not going to get it. I'll be just some creepy man. And what is this? So I didn't say anything to her, but I had that impulse. I really had to fight to not share what this book just did. I'm like, you'll never believe this. And I would have had to tell her the whole book. It would have fallen flat. A good book, it changes you. A good book will set you free,
Amen. Amen. Thank you for spending time with us today. And please join us again next week as we continue our studies in another episode of Fastened Like Nails. God bless.
You've been listening to Fastened Like Nails, a presentation of Lamplighter Ministries. Our mission is to make ready a people prepared for the Lord by building Christ-like character, one story at a time. To learn more about our family collection of rare books, dramatic audios, or guild programs, visit lamplighter.net. To hear more podcasts, search for Fastened Like Nails wherever you listen to podcasts.
Get ready for a spiritual action-adventure story like no other.
Thou knowest the call. It is inscribed on thine heart.
An aged knight gives his last instructions to his beloved student.
Am I ready?
Fear nothing, only be strong and courageous.
But Sir Constans soon faces a treacherous sorcerer knight.
What seeks he here? He seeks the king's city, and who has ever found it?
In the name of the king, I can do all! And now, rise, Sir Constant, Knight of the Splendid Way.
Wilt thou surrender thy sword, or shall it be battle first?
Fool that I was!
Sir Knight of the Splendid Way on the next Lamplighter Theater.